La souveraineté alimentaire est le fondement de toute dignité.
Burkina Faso has just invested nearly $1 billion, not in weapons but in seeds and soil, all with just one goal: never need foreign food again. Is this a desperate gamble, or the smartest rebellion Africa's ever seen? Let's find out. This wasn't just policy. This was a national strike on dependency. Burkina Faso, a nation often seen through the lens of instability, just flipped the narrative. While other countries beg for grain shipments and emergency rations, Burkina Faso is planting its solution, literally. The operation is called the Agricultural Offensive. But don't let the name fool you. This is not a soft rural development plan. This is a military-style mobilization of land, labor, and logistics to break the country's cycle of food imports and aid dependency. The numbers are shocking. Billions poured into local production, not to satisfy donors, but to reclaim power. Economic power, strategic power, psychological power. Why now? For decades, food in Burkina Faso was a source of national weakness. Almost 70% of its food was imported or dependent on NGOs. Rice shipments came from Asia, wheat from Europe, corn, fertilizer, even poultry, all traced back to some foreign hand. Whenever a crisis hit, be it drought, war, or sanctions, the food system cracked. And with it, so did sovereignty. But something has changed. Since 2023, the tone of the government has shifted from survival to defiance. The $981 million initiative didn't come from a foreign loan. It was built from internal reserves, reallocated budgets, and emergency national funds. The message was clear. If the West cuts off aid, Burkina Faso will gain independence from the ground up. The operation has unfolded like a silent revolution. Thousands of hectares have been selected for expansion. Unused state lands have been reassigned to cooperatives. Forgotten valleys and dry savannas are being transformed with irrigation blueprints. The nation is being redrawn, not with borders, but with farms. What makes this moment historic isn't just the scale, it's the secrecy. The West didn't see it coming, and that's exactly how the Burkinabe wanted it. While headlines were chasing coups and security stories, the real transformation was happening far from cameras, in rural provinces, along dry riverbeds, inside agricultural warehouses filled with newly imported machinery. Even more surprising, the decision to combine agriculture with security. In zones once dominated by insurgent groups, the government is now deploying farming units alongside local defense volunteers. Instead of rifles, they carry seed bags. Instead of landmines, they plant irrigation pipes. These fields are no longer war zones. They're the front lines of a new economic resistance. And yet, the world barely noticed. There was no panic in Brussels, no policy alert in Washington. They didn't see Burkina Faso's silent declaration: "We will never beg for food again." This isn't just economics, it's a spiritual shift. For a people long told they were too poor, too unstable, too dependent, this billion-dollar move is a full-throated rejection of that story. Burkina Faso is now writing its own. But here's the twist. Where exactly is all this money going? What systems are being rebuilt? And who's leading this from the ground? You've seen the number, $981 million. But this isn't just a cash drop. It's a calculated rewiring of the entire ecosystem that feeds Burkina Faso. And to understand the scale of it, you have to leave the boardrooms and walk into the fields. Because here's the real secret. This isn't about producing more food. It's about controlling every inch of the journey, from seed to silo, from fish pond to frying pan. At the heart of this transformation is an idea that's long been missing in Africa's development model. Food is power, and power comes from ownership. For too long, farmers were seen as passive recipients. Donors shipped in seeds, fertilizer came from Europe, and machinery, when it existed, was either broken or borrowed. What Burkina Faso is building now is something completely different. A domestic machine of production that answers to no outsider. Let's start with the inputs. The country is distributing its government-procured stockpiles of high-yield seeds, tailored for its climate. These aren't experimental trials. These are battlefield tools. In places like the Bouclés du Mouhoun and Centre-Est regions, Rice seeds bred for dry terrain are being deployed with military precision. Behind them, pesticides and fertilizers, acquired in bulk through non-Western suppliers, are handed directly to farmer cooperatives, cutting out profit-siphoning middlemen. Next, the machinery. Dozens of container loads of tractors, power tillers, and motorized water pumps have arrived under state control. Not leased, not NGO-sponsored, fully owned. Mechanization isn't an accessory here, it's the foundation. It allows fewer people to cultivate more land, faster. But here's the twist. The government isn't just dumping machines into villages. It's building maintenance hubs across provinces. Young mechanics are being trained to repair and sustain the fleet, turning tools into permanent infrastructure. But even that's only half the story. Where Burkina Faso is playing the long game is in irrigation. In the past, farming here meant one crop per year, maybe two, if the rains cooperated. That dependence is dead. Massive trenching projects are underway to redirect water from small rivers and reservoirs into controlled irrigation grids. Solar-powered pumps now dot dry fields, pulling groundwater into previously uncultivable zones. Rain no longer decides who eats. The state does. And this control continues after the harvest. Burkina Faso's greatest leak wasn't what it failed to grow. It was what it failed to preserve. Post-harvest losses often ate up 30 to 40% of crops, but not anymore. The country is now installing solar dryers, sealed storage bunkers, and village-level cold rooms, ensuring farmers can hold their goods until prices are right and export if they choose. It's not just about food, it's about leverage. Farmers who used to accept whatever price they were offered now walk into the market with storage capacity, supply coordination, and pricing power. In other words, they're no longer just growers, they're economic players. And none of this happens without organization. Across the country, cooperatives are being legally registered, trained in finance, and connected to buyers through centralized platforms. Digital mapping of farmland is underway. Satellite tracking will soon allow real-time updates on crop conditions. A rural data revolution is brewing in the shadows. So while the world debates whether aid should increase or decrease, Burkina Faso is doing something more radical. It's making aid obsolete. But who is driving this transformation on the ground? Who's receiving these tools? And how are they making it work, region by region? To answer that, we need to meet the real force behind this movement, not the politicians, but the people. Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. The machines may drive the revolution, but people are its soul. Not generals or CEOs, but the very ones long forgotten in every economic plan. The youth with no diplomas, the women sidelined from ownership, and the millions displaced by conflict. These are not charity cases in Burkina Faso's new food strategy. They are the ones leading it. At the core of the agricultural offensive lies a radical social recalibration. If the state is investing in sovereignty, the people must become the sovereigns. And that starts by mobilizing the most underutilized demographic force in the country, young people under 30, who make up more than 70% of the population. The government isn't just employing youth to dig ditches or guard farms. It's offering them a long-term stake in the food economy. Training centers are springing up across the regions, offering hands-on skills in everything from tractor operation to cooperative accounting. But perhaps the most revolutionary shift is this. The youth aren't just learning to work for farms, they're learning to own them. Land redistribution programs are quietly reallocating unused state plots and conflict-abandoned fields to youth-led collectives. In exchange, these collectives must prove output capacity, maintain water infrastructure, and reinvest profits. It's a military model applied to agriculture, results, not rhetoric, and they're delivering. In the Nord region, a group of displaced youth from the town of Djibo now operates a fully irrigated onion and pepper farm, with solar drying units and cold storage financed by the Food Sovereignty Fund. Within 6 months, they've not only become self-sufficient, but they've also started exporting to nearby towns and hiring others. These are former victims of fear, now armed with tools far more powerful than weapons, stability, income, and land. But it's not just about young men. Women, long relegated to informal roles in production, are being brought into the core of the food economy. Through new cooperative frameworks, women are gaining legal ownership of farms and processing units, especially in sectors like poultry, dried fruit, and shea butter production. In Bobo Dioulasso, women-run mango processing groups are leveraging solar dehydration units to produce export-grade dried mango slices. They're no longer waiting for buyers to show up. They're contracting ahead of season and negotiating with regional distributors. And they're doing it as owners, not laborers. Meanwhile, in areas destabilized by insurgencies, the government is pairing agricultural work with community defense. Internally displaced persons (IDPs) are being given the chance to rebuild their lives through productive resettlement zones. These zones are secured by local defense units and equipped with irrigation, housing, and starter kits. Instead of camps filled with aid, these are towns built around food. What makes this shift extraordinary is that it's not just about filling stomachs, it's about rebuilding identity. For a generation that grew up during the collapse, farming is no longer the job of the poor, it's the job of the revolutionary. The social cohesion impact is also undeniable. As young people plant crops together, build market plans, and share equipment, a sense of shared future begins to bloom. Radicalization loses its grip. Migration slows. Families return. This is the long-term peace dividend of food sovereignty. It makes people want to stay, invest, and defend where they are. But behind every plowed field and packed truck, there is a question of efficiency. Are these efforts sustainable? Can smallholders match the productivity of industrial systems without collapsing under pressure? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. While boots are hitting the soil and farmers are commanding machines in the fields, another battle is unfolding quietly in laboratories, training centers, and behind digital screens. It's not as visible as tractors or irrigation canals, but it's just as revolutionary. Burkina Faso is now betting on something the old system never imagined: science-led sovereignty. In the past, Africa was sold as a myth. That modern agriculture meant copying Europe's model, importing expensive chemicals, leasing foreign machines, and relying on international experts to tell farmers what to grow and how to grow it. Burkina Faso is burning that playbook, and instead, it's building a technology ecosystem rooted in its environment, its climate, and its people. Let's start with what would have seemed impossible a decade ago: nuclear science in African agriculture. Through a partnership with the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) and the FAO, Burkina Faso has joined the Atoms for Food Initiative, a global program that uses peaceful nuclear technology to improve food systems. But this isn't some experimental side project. It's already operational. Using radiation-based methods, local scientists are now analyzing soil quality at the molecular level, identifying nutrient deficiencies invisible to the human eye. This allows for ultra-targeted fertilization, minimizing waste, saving money, and boosting yield. It's called precision agriculture, and in a country like Burkina Faso, where every hectare counts, it's a game changer. But nuclear methods don't stop at the soil. They're being used to control pests without harmful chemicals, using what's called the sterile insect technique. Male insects are rendered infertile in labs and released into the wild, dramatically reducing pest populations without poison. It's clean, it's sustainable, and it's Burkinabe. Beyond atomic science, digital innovation is quietly infiltrating rural life. Farmers in pilot regions are now using mobile-based platforms to track weather patterns, check soil moisture, and get early warnings on diseases. These aren't Silicon Valley apps. These are custom-built tools designed by local engineers and researchers who understand Sahelian realities. In many regions, drones are being deployed, not for security, but for crop surveillance. Flying above test plots, they scan growth rates, spot water stress, and detect early signs of disease. With this data, agronomists can guide communities on what to plant next, where to rotate crops, and when to harvest. It's turning farming into a science-backed art form. Even food preservation is entering the tech zone. In partnership with local universities, solar-powered dehydration chambers and airtight, biodegradable packaging systems are being developed. These extend shelf life, allow transport across long distances, and open up export opportunities without expensive cold chain logistics. In essence, they turn a mango into a marketable asset, not just for a week, but for a season. Meanwhile, youth training centers are transforming into innovation hubs. Young Burkinabe aren't just learning how to plant, they're learning how to design irrigation systems, fix drones, code agri-apps, and build next-generation storage units. In many rural regions, farmers are now hiring local techies to maintain their equipment, giving rise to a new rural tech economy. What's truly remarkable is the mindset shift. Farming is no longer seen as manual labor. It's becoming a technical profession, a skilled trade, even a national calling. And because of that, youth who once fled villages for cities are now returning, not with desperation, but with plans, prototypes, and power tools. Burkina Faso is proving something radical. Africa doesn't need to import innovation. It can build its own. And by embedding science into soil, the country is creating not just food, but a future. But there's one more frontier left. If Burkina Faso is building a new internal system, how does it plan to defend it against external forces, foreign markets, donor pressure, or even sabotage? The answer lies in the politics behind the food. By now, it's clear that Burkina Faso isn't just growing crops. It's growing independence, from machines to seeds, from irrigation to storage, from satellites to nuclear tech. But underneath the tractors and the science labs lies the final layer of this transformation. It's not agricultural, it's ideological. This is not just a policy shift. This is a rejection of the international food system as it exists today. And that has made powerful people nervous. Because Burkina Faso is not quietly feeding itself, it's making a loud political statement. We don't need you anymore. To understand the stakes, you have to look at how food has long been used as a tool of geopolitical control. Across the African continent, when drought hits or instability spikes, international donors arrive with containers of wheat, rice, or powdered milk. The optics look like generosity, but the fine print often reads like submission, free food that undermines local markets, distorts prices, and keeps governments reliant on yearly appeals. Burkina Faso has decided to walk away from that model, not gradually, but decisively. It's cutting import bills, slashing foreign food aid programs, and publicly framing its food strategy as a matter of national security, not humanitarian assistance. This isn't just semantics, it's a pivot from dependency to sovereignty. President Ibrahim Traoré's administration has openly stated that a country that doesn't control its food supply will never be truly independent. That message has echoed across the Sahel, finding eager ears in neighboring Mali and Niger. Together, these nations are beginning to form an unofficial bloc, linked not only by military transitions, but by a shared economic philosophy: produce locally, feed internally, trade regionally. By the way, we have launched merch that honors the African leaders who are taking a stand for Africa. Check them out, to show you also stand with loyal sons of Africa, no matter where you are. The West, for the most part, has remained quiet. But silence does not mean approval. As Burkina Faso's food imports dwindle, so do European export revenues. Western agribusinesses that once sold fertilizer, seed packages, or poultry products to West African markets now face shrinking demand and a rising wave of domestic competition. Even global institutions feel the tremor. The traditional model of development relied on African food insecurity to justify billions in aid, consultancy contracts, and long-term donor engagements. But if Burkina Faso succeeds, if it shows the continent a pathway to self-reliance without the World Bank, without the EU, without USAID, what happens to that system? This is why food sovereignty is no longer just about farming. It's about who has the right to shape the future. If Burkina Faso succeeds, it sends a message far louder than a press conference ever could. The old rules don't apply anymore. And this is where resistance begins to surface, not in open threats, but in subtle moves. Reports have emerged of pressure on regional trading partners to avoid long-term food contracts with Ouagadougou. Others speak of conditional aid offers laced with requirements to abandon parts of the program. Surveillance of supply chains. Quite restrictions on foreign exchange transfers for agricultural machinery. These aren't conspiracy theories, they're patterns, historically used against any country that threatens to disrupt the global order. And Burkina Faso, by placing food at the center of its sovereignty, has entered that arena. Yet the government doesn't appear shaken. Its strategy includes buffer zones against this pressure, such as closer cooperation with non-Western partners, regional food sharing deals, and local currency-based trade for seeds and equipment. The logic is clear. If they can't break us economically, they'll try diplomatically. And if not diplomatically, then through narrative painting self-reliant countries as unstable, autocratic, or unrealistic. But Burkina Faso has already passed the point of no return. Its food revolution is too far along, too widely embraced, and too deeply embedded in its national identity. And that's why it matters, not just to its people, but to the entire continent. Because if food can be reclaimed, so can everything else. And in this dusty, defiant, landlocked nation, Africa may have just found its blueprint. So what happens when a nation stops begging and starts planting? Could Burkina Faso's food revolution trigger a continent-wide awakening? Let us know in the comment section. Is this the moment Africa finally takes back control of its plate? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.